You've been flagged for unrealistic expectations, CEO Jessica Hawkins announced, her voice cutting through the silence of our all-hands Zoom call like a blade. 200 faces stared back from tiny squares on the screen, watching my professional execution in real time. The coffee mug in my hand suddenly felt too heavy. Maybe it was the weight of 23 years at this company finally hitting me. Or maybe it was the sound of my patience finally cracking. My name's Robert Sullivan, but everyone calls me Rob. I'm 49 years old, and until that moment, I was Senior Director of Risk Management and Compliance at Pinnacle Financial Group here in Charlotte. 20 years in the Army taught me a thing or two about systems, protocols, and what happens when people ignore both. I'd spent the last 3 years at Pinnacle building safety nets nobody wanted to think about until they needed them. Unrealistic expectations. That's what Jessica called the risk protocols that had kept us solvent through 2 market corrections and a vendor fraud scandal that could have wiped us clean. I was the guy who'd quietly reinforced the foundation while she and her team played financial Jenga with our $450 million in assets under management. Jessica was 38, Madison-educated MBA who'd taken over when her father retired 2 years ago. Smart enough, but she had that startup mentality that treats established protocols like suggestions. Her 26-year-old daughter, Madison, worked as our marketing director, fresh out of college with ideas about digital transformation that made my compliance software look like a typewriter. I didn't unmute myself, didn't defend my work, or explain how my unrealistic expectations had improved our capital adequacy ratio by 8.5% last quarter. I just sat there, watching my camera square go dark, listening to the deafening silence from colleagues who used to message me at midnight when the quarterly reports didn't balance. That's when I knew. Not suspected knew. They didn't understand what I did. They thought I was just another old-school finance guy standing in the way of their innovation culture. But that moment, that public dismissal wrapped in corporate doublespeak, lit something inside me that had been dormant since my last deployment. See, they called me Senior Director of Risk Management and Compliance. Sounds impressive until you realize it means I was the guy building invisible firewalls between their mistakes and our regulatory obligations. While Jessica talked about moving fast and breaking things, I was the one making sure we didn't break anything that would land us in federal court. I didn't make noise about it. I just kept the lights on while Jessica's team rewrote playbooks that had worked fine for decades. Every month, I submitted reports that nobody read. Every quarter, I flagged potential issues that legal never got around to addressing. Every week, I watched Andrew Walsh, the 29-year-old nephew of our board chairman, make strategic decisions based on PowerPoint slides instead of actual data. But here's what they never bothered to learn about old soldiers. We plan for contingencies. And 3 years ago, when we were restructuring our subsidiary loan guarantees to improve our interest rates, I saw an opportunity to build the ultimate contingency plan. I called it Clause 6.7, Cross-Default Asset Seizure Protocol. Hidden in plain sight inside 47 pages of revised lending documentation that legal skimmed and everyone signed. It was boring, dense, written in language so dry you'd need a humidifier just to read it. But it was there, and it was binding. The clause linked our 3 main subsidiaries through technical default triggers. If one went down due to administrative negligence, the others could be liquidated automatically to prevent systemic collapse. A firewall, I told them. Just good risk management. Legal approved it without really reading it. The board signed it during a rushed session before someone's vacation. Jessica's signature was right there on page 23, next to a sticky note reminding her about her yoga class. Nobody thought I'd ever use it. Hell, even I wasn't sure I ever would. But that changed the moment they decided to freeze my $175,000 salary and hang me out to dry in front of the entire company. See, that salary wasn't just my paycheck. It was covering my wife Sarah's ongoing cancer treatments, insurance that our family plan barely touched. It was my daughter Emma's college tuition at NC State, where she was studying engineering because her old man taught her that systems matter. Here's what stung the most. It wasn't just Jessica's announcement, it was what came after. Right as she finished explaining how my salary would be temporarily frozen pending further review, someone actually started clapping. Slow, uncertain applause that spread through a few more participants before dying out in embarrassed silence. My own colleagues, people I'd covered for during audit season, people who'd called me the safety net when vendor payments went sideways. Now they were applauding my professional humiliation like it was some kind of team-building exercise. I sat there for exactly 30 seconds, watching the little timer in the corner of my screen tick up. 42 minutes into what Jessica probably thought was a bold leadership moment. 42 minutes to destroy 23 years of institutional knowledge and mutual respect. Nobody messaged me afterward. Nobody called. Radio silence from the same people who used to ping me at 11:30 p.m. because, Rob, you're the only one who understands how the subsidiary cash flows work with our regulatory reporting. I didn't take it personally. In the Army, you learn that some battles are lost before they start, not because of strategy or tactics, but because someone in command stopped listening to their intelligence officers. Jessica had stopped listening to me months ago when I warned her about the risks of accelerating our lending timeline. Now she was about to learn why that was a mistake. I didn't storm out, didn't slam my laptop shut or fire off angry emails to HR. I just logged out of the call, walked to my kitchen, and opened the secure folder I'd kept updated for 3 years. Legacy Protocols, it was labeled. The kind of folder that screams ignore me to anyone under 35. There it was. Clause 6.7, still active, still binding. Still requiring my electronic signature every 180 days to renew the intercompany guarantee authorizations that kept our subsidiary credit lines flowing smoothly. I checked my calendar. The next renewal window closed in 96 hours, 4 days for them to figure out what they'd just done. I made myself a sandwich. Turkey and Swiss, nothing fancy. Because sometimes the most devastating decisions come over lunch, not in boardrooms. While I ate, I thought about my conversation with Sarah the night before. She'd been worried about the tension at work, the way Jessica's team had been marginalizing anyone over 40. Maybe it's time to start looking elsewhere, she'd said, setting down her tea. The chemo made her tired, but her mind was still sharp as ever. You've got more experience in your little finger than that whole executive team combined. I'd laughed it off then. Now I was wondering if Sarah had seen something I'd missed. Women have a way of reading office politics that us military guys sometimes overlook. We focus on the mission, they focus on the people. Both matter, but in corporate America, the people part usually wins. That afternoon, I accessed our compliance server through a secure terminal I'd maintained since the last regulatory audit. 3 years ago, I'd built a monitoring system that tracked renewal deadlines, authorization windows, and compliance triggers across all our subsidiary operations. Simple, elegant, bulletproof. Each subsidiary had its own renewal timer. Each timer was linked to a protocol requiring my digital signature. If those signatures weren't refreshed within their windows, the system flagged them as expired guarantees. 3 expired guarantees within a 96-hour period triggered an automatic compliance review under Clause 6.7. The beauty of the system was its simplicity. Like a good military operation, it had clear objectives, defined parameters, and automatic execution protocols. No room for interpretation, no gray areas. Either the authorizations were renewed on time, or the dominoes started falling. I had 4 days to decide whether to sign the renewals or let the system run its course. Day 1 passed quietly. Jessica probably thought she'd handled the Rob problem with typical MBA efficiency. Fire the dissenter, redistribute his workload, move fast, and break things. Classic startup mentality applied to a regulated financial institution. That evening, I had dinner with Jules Martinez, my old Army buddy who worked in IT at a competing bank downtown. We'd served together in logistics during my second deployment, where he'd learned that the best information systems are the ones nobody notices until they stop working. "Heard about your little announcement today," Jules said over his beer. Word travels fast in Charlotte's banking community. Jessica making moves, something like that. Jules studied my face. 20 years of friendship teaches you when someone's holding cards close to their chest. You always were the careful one. Remember that supply depot in Kandahar? Everyone wanted to rush the inventory, but you insisted on triple-checking every serial number. Good thing, too. Turned out half the equipment had been diverted to black market sales. Yeah, and if we'd rushed it, we'd have signed off on the theft ourselves. He took another sip. Funny how attention to detail either saves your ass or gets you fired, depending on who's in charge. We didn't talk about Clause 6.7. We didn't need to. Jules understood systems the way I did. He knew that every complex organization has pressure points, places where small actions create big consequences. The trick is building those pressure points before you need them. Day 2 brought the first tremor. Brighton Holdings' $12.5 million credit facility required quarterly authorization renewal. The bank's automated system sent its usual reminder to my compliance inbox. Normally, I'd process it within an hour. This time, I marked it under review and moved on. The system was designed to be forgiving. Financial institutions need flexibility, room for administrative delays, and human error. But forgiveness has limits, and those limits were written into Clause 6.7 with military precision. By day 3, someone in accounting noticed the delayed authorization. Nothing dramatic, just a yellow flag on a dashboard that most people never looked at. But yellow flags have a way of turning red if you ignore them long enough. I spent that evening with Emma, helping her with a systems engineering problem for her senior project. She was designing a fail-safe mechanism for a manufacturing process, something that would shut down production automatically if safety parameters were exceeded. The key, I told her, is making the system transparent enough that people trust it, but robust enough that it works even when they don't. Like what you built at work. Something like that. She looked at me with the same expression Sarah used when she suspected I wasn't telling her everything. "Dad, are you okay? You've seemed different since Monday. Just work stuff, sweetheart. Nothing you need to worry about." But there was plenty to worry about, and the countdown clock in my head was ticking louder every hour. Wednesday morning, 96 hours after my public execution, I watched the real show begin. The first call came at 8:17 a.m. Jessica's assistant to legal, wondering about some paperwork irregularity with our subsidiary guarantees. Legal called me directly at 8:33 a.m. I let it go to voicemail. The message was predictably corporate. "Rob, this is Patricia from legal. We have some questions about the quarterly renewals. Could you give us a call when you get a chance?" No urgency in her voice. No recognition that the clock was ticking towards something they hadn't bothered to understand. By 9:15 a.m., they'd figured out what they were looking at. A cascade of expiring authorizations, all requiring the digital signature of the Director of Risk Management and Compliance. The same director whose access had been suspended pending review. At 10:22 a.m., my phone rang again. This time it was Jessica herself. "Rob," she said, her voice tight. "We need to talk." "About what?" I asked, genuinely curious. "The subsidiary renewals. There seems to be some kind of technical issue." "Technical issue?" "Your signatures. They're required for the quarterly authorizations and—" She paused. "And we can't process them without your active credentials." I let the silence stretch. In military negotiations, silence is a weapon. The first person to talk usually loses. "Rob, are you there? I'm here. Just wondering why you're calling me about work issues when my access is suspended." Another pause. "This is important. The Brighton facility expires in 6 hours. If we don't renew it..." "What happens if you don't renew it?" "It triggers a technical default on the intercompany guarantee." And we're not entirely sure what happens after that. That's when I knew they'd never actually read Clause 6.7. They'd signed it, approved it, filed it away, but nobody had bothered to understand what it actually did. Jessica's generation loves to talk about disruption and innovation, but they have no patience for documentation. They assume someone else read the fine print. "I'm sure your legal team can figure it out," I said. "Wasn't that the point of bringing in all that young talent?" I hung up. At 2:47 p.m., the Brighton facility officially expired. No renewal, no signature, no authorization. Just a simple administrative lapse that triggered the first domino in a chain reaction nobody saw coming. The compliance system did exactly what I'd designed it to do. It logged the expired guarantee, flagged it as a technical default, and started the 72-hour countdown for Clause 6.7 activation. That evening, Sarah noticed I was quieter than usual during dinner. Emma had stayed late at the library working on her project, so it was just the two of us at the kitchen table. "Rough day?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Chemo had made her more perceptive, not less. She could read my moods like a barometer. Jessica called, asked me to fix something while I'm supposedly suspended. Let me guess, something only you know how to do? Something like that. Sarah set down her fork and looked at me directly. Rob, what aren't you telling me? I'd never been good at lying to my wife. 26 years of marriage teaches you that honesty, even delayed honesty, works better than deception. I may have built some safeguards into our systems, protection against the kind of management decisions that could hurt people like us. Protection how? The kind that makes sure institutional knowledge can't just be dismissed without consequences. She was quiet for a moment, processing. Sarah had worked in corporate HR before Emma was born. She understood office politics better than I ever would. How much trouble could this cause? For them? Significant. For me? Depends on how they handle the next 48 hours. And for us? That was the question I'd been avoiding. Either very good or very bad. No middle ground. She reached across the table and took my hand. I trust your judgment. You've never let this family down. Thursday brought panic. At 6:30 a.m., I found 17 missed calls on my phone. Legal Jessica, the CFO, even Madison Hawkins. Jessica's daughter had been promoted to marketing director last year, fresh out of Duke with an MBA and enough confidence to think family connections made her qualified for anything. I made coffee and checked my secure dashboard. 2 more subsidiaries had renewal deadlines that day. Pinnacle Logistics needed authorization renewal by 3 p.m. Southeastern Credit required signature by close of business. I marked them both under review and went for a walk around my neighborhood. It was one of those perfect Carolina mornings. Cool air and sunshine that reminded you why people moved south in the first place. Kids waiting for school buses, neighbors walking dogs, life proceeding normally while a few miles away, a $450 million financial institution was discovering what happens when you fire the wrong person. When I got back, the parking lot at Pinnacle's headquarters looked like a crime scene. Cars everywhere, including several I recognized as belonging to board members who'd driven down from Raleigh. Emergency sessions on a Thursday afternoon usually meant someone was getting fired or something was on fire. In this case, both were true. My phone buzzed with a text from Andrew Walsh, the 29-year-old nephew of our board chairman who ran strategic planning. Rob, we need your help. This is bigger than anyone realized. I texted back, I'm suspended, remember? The reply came immediately. This could destroy the company. Please. I didn't respond. Andrew was smart enough, but he had that entitled confidence that comes from never facing real consequences. In the military, we called it peacetime leadership, all theory and no practical experience. He was about to get a crash course in why systems matter. At 5:15 p.m., both remaining facilities expired. No renewals, no authorizations, no signatures. The compliance system registered 3 technical defaults within a 72-hour window. According to Clause 6.7, that triggered automatic asset seizure protocols across all intercompany guarantees. I poured myself a bourbon and sat on my back porch watching the sunset over Charlotte's skyline. Somewhere in those glass towers, lawyers were probably pulling all-nighters trying to figure out how to stop something that was already in motion. The countdown clock in my head had reached single digits, less than 12 hours until Clause 6.7 went live. Friday morning at 8:59 a.m., Clause 6.7 activated automatically. I wasn't in the building to see it happen, but I heard about it from Jules Martinez, who'd gotten the call from his counterpart in Pinnacle's IT department. The compliance system sent simultaneous notices to all 3 state banking regulators where our subsidiaries were registered. Asset seizure protocols initiated. Liquidation notices filed. Cross-default provisions triggered across $47 million in intercompany obligations. By 9:30 a.m., Pinnacle Financial Group was in technical bankruptcy. Not because we were insolvent, but because I'd built a system that treated administrative negligence like fiduciary breach. And when you fire the guy who maintains your administrative compliance, negligence becomes inevitable. Jessica called me one last time at 10:15 a.m. Her voice sounded different, smaller. Rob, what do you want? I don't want anything, I told her. I'm just watching good risk management protocols do what they were designed to do. This will destroy the company. No, I said. Ignoring the guy who built your safety systems destroyed the company. I just designed the system that documented it. There has to be something we can do. Some way to reverse this. I thought about Sarah's medical bills sitting in a neat stack on my kitchen counter. I thought about Emma's tuition payment due next month. I thought about 23 years of quietly keeping the lights on while people who couldn't read a balance sheet made strategic decisions. You could have thought about that before you froze my salary in front of 200 people. That was a mistake. We can fix this. Reinstate your position, give you a raise, whatever you need. I don't think you understand. The system isn't waiting for my forgiveness. It's following the protocols you signed 3 years ago. The silence on the other end stretched for nearly a minute. Then, what happens now? Now, your lawyers try to explain to federal regulators why a mid-tier investment firm allowed its risk management protocols to expire during active lending operations. Should be interesting. I hung up. The cleanup took 6 weeks. Word traveled fast through Charlotte's financial community. By noon Friday, 3 competitor banks had called offering positions. By Monday, Pinnacle's stock had dropped 40%. By Wednesday, the board had fired Jessica and brought in an interim CEO to manage the crisis. First Charlotte Bank made an acquisition offer the following week. 30 cents on the dollar, take it or leave it. The board took it. Jessica was demoted to VP level at the new combined entity, reporting to someone half her age who actually understood banking regulations. Madison lost her marketing job entirely when First Charlotte discovered that most of her digital transformation initiatives violated federal advertising requirements. Andrew Walsh went back to business school, probably to learn about something called institutional knowledge. As for me, my severance package included a little-known retention clause I'd negotiated 3 years ago. If my departure occurred during a compliance crisis that threatened company stability, I was entitled to enhanced compensation for institutional knowledge transfer. The check for $850,000 cleared on a Tuesday. But the real satisfaction came 3 weeks later when First Charlotte offered me the position of Chief Risk Officer. Same building, different floor, with a team that actually read my reports and understood why details matter. On my first day, I hung something on my office wall, not a diploma or a family photo, but a framed printout of Clause 6.7, signed by every executive who thought they could dismiss 20 years of military-grade risk management. Next to it, a brass nameplate with a simple inscription: "Prior planning prevents poor performance." Emma visited my new office during her spring break, marveling at the view from the 32nd floor. "Dad, this is amazing. But I have to ask, did you plan all of this?" I thought about that question for a moment. I planned for the possibility that someone would make a very bad decision. I just didn't know when or how. And Mom's treatments? Fully covered. Better insurance than we've ever had. She hugged me, and I realized that the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about protecting the people who matter most and building systems robust enough to survive other people's stupidity. That afternoon, I got a message from Patricia in legal, my old legal department, now part of First Charlotte's compliance review. They'd found some irregularities in Pinnacle's lending practices during the transition audit. Apparently, several loan authorizations had been processed without proper documentation, approved by people who didn't have signature authority. "Thought you should know," Patricia wrote. "Looks like your old protocols caught more than anyone realized." I smiled and forwarded the message to Jules. Sometimes the best systems are the ones that keep working long after you're gone. 6 months later, Sarah's oncologist delivered the news we'd been hoping for. Clear scans, treatment complete, prognosis excellent. We celebrated at our favorite restaurant downtown, the one with a view of the Pinnacle building, where I'd spent 23 years building invisible safety nets. "Any regrets?" Sarah asked over dessert. I looked out at the city lights, thinking about Jessica's startup mentality meeting military precision, about young executives learning why experience costs more than enthusiasm. "None," I said. "Some lessons can't be taught. They have to be lived." We walked home hand in hand, past the building where I used to work, where a new team was probably learning to read the fine print and respect the people who write it. They never should have frozen the guy who built the thermostat. After all, in systems as in life, the most dangerous failures are the ones you can't see coming, especially when you fired everyone who could have warned you they were already here.